I've known Jason Schwartz since he's made Aliyah. He's one of my neighbors, one of my closest friends here in Israel. Jason and I helped found the shul that you guys came by last year. We had the Shabbaton in Beit Shemesh. For 6.5 years, we basically ran the shul. We did everything that needed doing. Jason is an extremely active person within this community, active politically with all the different people in Beit Shemesh, and he feels a very big responsibility to give back to the community. You know, last time I had one of my other friends, he also gives back to the community in a little bit more prominent stage as in the Knesset, but Jason gives back a lot to the community. He is a very busy person. You can see on our website his biography, from shopping.com to his different companies that he's involved with. He shepherds companies from emerging, when they've emerged, to a couple companies help take them public, and he's very busy with work, but he always has time for whatever it is that people in the community need, organizing meetings, meeting with politicians, meeting at City Hall, taking care of things like that. Plus, Baruch Hashem, taking care of the needs of his 9 children, which is also probably not very easy. It is a full-time job just doing that, and he has wonderful, really great kids. He is a great role model for everyone in our community. He's somebody who I'm very happy to be able to call him a friend, because everybody who knows me knows that I am a stubborn, pig-headed guy, and he's very similar, and if we weren't friends, we'd literally be at each other's throats all the time. So I'm very happy to be able to call him my friend, and I'm excited to have him come speak in Yeshiva.
Stubborn is usually the word that they say about me. And I mean that in all seriousness. Shmuel, thank you very much. I'm not that busy. I actually was just out in Switzerland last week. Was on the ski slopes. Yeah, that's what we do. I actually was on the ski slopes. I wasn't skiing. But I was in Switzerland last week for an interesting business meeting. Actually resulted in some fun stories, but so it's great to be here. I didn't know that I was going to be broadcasting live. Not something that I'm used to doing, and as Shmuel could tell you, I'm not somebody who's fond of public speaking. I've never done. Okay, I almost said that with a straight face. No, so it's really a great opportunity. I asked Shmuel, what do people talk about? What do guys want to hear? He said, tell them your story. I said, well, is that a shiur? He told me it was supposed to be a shiur. I said, if I give a shiur, I'm not sure everybody's going to stay awake. So I'm not going to give a heavy shiur. But I figured that I should have props so that it makes it look like that, we're still in the issue. But I did have one thought that I think kind of will get us into the mood of what I do for a living, and how that could be interesting for you guys as you move through this year and maybe other years, and continue your learning and development until you decide on your career and how you want to lead the next phase of your life, your adult life. So we're going to be, in less than about 48 hours, we're going to be celebrating Hanukkah. We're going to light the first candle. And one of the ideas brought down is we know, right, the fight of Hanukkah, or the war of Hanukkah, the celebration of Hanukkah, is very different than the celebration of Purim. In the celebration of Purim, which was also rabbinically enacted, we were at risk of death. Right? Haman wanted to go out and kill all the Jews. Minar ve'ad zaken, tap v'nashim b'yom echad, wipe us off the face of the earth. Hanukkah wasn't that. Hanukkah was really more of a spiritual battle. We were faced with the challenge of Hellenism, right? Of the Greek way of life, which was all about sports, about body, about shape, about how you looked, how you interacted. They were the people who who started to develop some of the great business ideas that we still use today. And how did we take that, what was going on in the world, and integrate it with the firm Jewish life? And that was a challenge. And the Kishegavru Malchus Beis Chashmonai, when the Chashmonai won, they in a sense were able to preserve the Jewish identity even in the world that we live in, that we lived in then and that we live in today. One of the things that the Medrash writes in Bereshis Rabbah, one of the things that that the Greeks tried to enact was that they said to all Jews, Kisvu li al keren hashor, ein lachem chelek be'elokei Yisrael. Write on the horns of oxen that you have nothing to do. Ein lachem chelek, you have no part in the God of Israel. You think about it. What's the deal? What's the idea of the Kisvu li al keren hashor? Why are you sitting around, walking around, chiseling into your ox's horns? What was the point? So I once heard a word, and I was trying to see if it was brought down, and I thought it was in the Ma'aral. It still may be. I just couldn't find it. But I think it may be there. That the Keren Hashor, the horns, were actually used to be used as baby bottles. If you think about it, you can take a Keren Hashor, it's like a shofar, and it has a large opening that you could pour milk in, and it has a narrow opening so that it's able to be used as a baby bottle. And what they were trying to say is that from birth, from the earliest moment of a child's life, of a Jewish child's life, we want you to inculcate them. We want you to feed them this ideology. Ein lachem chelek be'elokei Yisrael. You're Greeks. You're not Jewish Greeks. And you're not Greek Jews. You're Greeks. Ein lachem chelek. And after all, what we know, and I think that was really the fight of Malchus Beis Chashmonai. And that's what we really deal with every single day. I think that it relates to a pasuk that exists at the end of Zos HaBracha, and this is mine, and then that'll be enough for HaTorah for this day. The pasuk talks about who is known as the shore out of all the Shvatim. Anybody know?
Yosef.
What was that?
Yosef.
Yosef, who we read about last week. Yosef was also Ish Matzliach. He was the guy who was involved in the community. He went out, he rose up to a position of prominence. He was the viceroy of Egypt. He was the guy who developed the economic recovery plan for the entire Egyptian peninsula. I mean, he was a pretty powerful person. And we say, Bechor Shor Hadar Lo, V'karnei Re'em Karnav. His karnaim, his horns, are the things that he uses. Bahem Amim Yinagach Yachtav Avsearetz. He's going to use those horns. Which horns? Those same horns that the Greeks said, write on them. Ein lachem chelek be'elokei Yisrael. Said he uses them. Yinagach Yachtav Avsearetz. He's going to use to conquer the land, to beat out all of the other kings that are trying to overcome Eretz Yisrael. And what will happen? V'heim rivivos Ephraim, v'heim alfei Menashe. Yosef had two children. He had Ephraim and he had Menashe. Who was the older one? Menashe. Yet, when the pasuk lists them, who's first? Ephraim. When we give a bracha to our children, what do we say? Yisimcha Elokeim Ke'Ephraim v'Menashe. Ephraim is the first. Now, I'm an older brother. Let me tell you something. If somebody says, "Oh, you're so-and-so's brother," I smile and go, "Right, he's my brother." Right? Remember, I came first. When you're the older brother, being first is part of your identity. Yet, we don't say, Yisimcha Elokeim Ke'Menashe v'Ephraim. When the pasuk says V'heim, it doesn't say V'heim alfei Menashe V'heim revivos Ephraim. Ephraim is first. My Rebbe Rav Rivlin likes to quote that Yosef had a vision. Yaakov Avinu, really, who was the source of that bracha Yisimcha Elokim Ke'Ephraim v'Menashe, had had a big idea. He realized that Ephraim was going to be a certain type of leader, was going to produce certain types of leaders. Yehoshua comes from Ephraim. The spiritual leaders of Klal Yisrael came from Ephraim. Menashe ultimately became very successful in business. Said Yaakov Avinu, we need both. We need our Ephraims and we need our Menashes. We need them to work together. The question is, what's your priority? So long as your Ephraim is before your Menashe, everything works. Everything is important. Both the Ephraim and the Menashe is important. But if you have your priorities in the reverse, then it isn't going to work. He explained it mathematically. He said that Ephraim is equal to a 1. Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. And Menashes are equal to zeros. Hevel Havalin Hakol Havel. When you take a 1 and you add zeros at the end of it, every additional 0 that you add increases the number exponentially. 1 becomes 10, becomes 100, becomes 1,000, becomes 10,000, etc. Every additional achievement that you have is a very positive and growth experience. And on the flip side, if you have it reversed, you could have all the zeros in front of it. You could have 1,000 zeros followed by a 1. And how much is that? It's only 1. The question is, where's your priority? And that is, I think, what results, and you guys have in this yeshiva a lot of great role models of people who do just that, right? Who are able to balance both a Torah true lifestyle, but also work, and also be part of a community, and also understand that that's important too. It's not just a 0. It's an important thing. So long as you start your day off with minyan every day. So long as you set our kovea itim la Torah. Whether that is chumash, I heard a guy practicing laning, actually really good. Or whether you're learning chumash, or whether you're doing daf yomi, or whether you're mishnayos to help, whatever it is. But if you do that, you're in good shape. All right, enough to our Torah?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay. So let me tell you a little bit about myself. So Shmuel kind of gave you some of the highlights. I am the proud father of 9 children, 7 boys and 2 girls. I call that an even balance. I'm very proud, happy to say our oldest is 16, our youngest is 3.5, and we have 9 children in that lifespan. I'll let you guys start running the numbers and figuring out the, how close in age everybody is. We cheated a little bit. We have a set of triplets in the mix. So numbers 3, 4, and 5 came together. You guys are all trying to go like, are you crazy? You still have more? The answer is we always wanted to have 4 kids, but we never did. We went from 2 to 5. So I said to my wife, listen, we're just going to start all over, do all over, and now we have 4 kids. So we made Aliyah. We came on Aliyah just about 7 years ago. And as Shmuel said, moved to Beit Shemesh, where, all right, I'll echo him. We've made some very, very good friends and are part of building a new community, the community that you guys have visited. Shmuel, together with Shmuel, we really were, I think, the driving force of the founding of that community and the shul that we daven in now. And we're very proud of what we did together, and we really have become very, very good friends. Perhaps the closest friends, and as he said, from 2 guys who are pretty bullheaded, that is a big accomplishment. I started my career, I'm an accountant by trade. I'm a CPA, went to YU, spent a little over 2 years in Keren B'Yavneh here in Israel, then went to YU, graduated with an accounting degree, and started my career at Price Waterhouse. How many of you guys know anything about the accounting world? Anybody? A little bit? Not the most interesting thing, but sometimes public accounting is really interesting. You go out and you meet different clients. and you do you review their books or, produce financial statements. I worked on, how many of you guys are from New York? So you know the drugstore Duane Reade?
Yeah.
So I took them public back in 1998. They were one of my first clients back in 1993, and then did a lot of work with high-tech companies, which ultimately became Israeli high-tech companies in the late 90s when.
What does that mean you took it public?
So.
Yeah, do you mind explaining all the terms?
All these terms?
All the jargon.
Okay, so so companies. Do you know what a public company is? A public company is publicly traded on the stock exchange, right, on the stock market, which means that you can buy shares, in the company as a private individual, go out and buy shares. Now, all companies, any company, even the guy who, owns the Makolet, technically has shares in his company, right? He has a company, that's the company that owns the Makolet, and he is the only shareholder, right? He owns 100% of that business. Now, as you go out and want to grow businesses, you have to raise capital, raise money in order to invest in your business. Now, you could do that in one of two ways. You could either raise debt, go to the bank and get a loan, and say, lend me some money, and if the business succeeds, I'll pay you that money back. And in between, I'll pay you some interest. Or you can raise what is called equity capital. Equity capital means that you give me money, and you're investing in the business, and you become a part owner of the business. I give you, in exchange for that, a certain number of shares of the business. Okay? And now you become a shareholder. Okay? And now, as that business grows, you own a bigger piece of a growing business. Think of it like a pie of pizza. So I can take a pie of pizza, and before I cut it up, it's a single pie of pizza, right? I own now 100% of that. And now we start cutting slices, cutting it in half, that first slice. Now it's in two pieces, 50-50. So long as you look at it together, it's the same 100%. But now you could take half of the pizza, and you could take half of the pizza, and it's divided. Together, it's the same 100%. You could then divide it further, right? And now you take 25%, and a piece of that goes to you, right? So that you still have 50%, but that 50% is divided now between the two of you, okay? Think of a company doing the same thing with its shares, with its ownership of the company. Except what's happening is that on day one, the company is worth, let's say, $1 million, okay? So when you own 50% of that, how much do you own? $500,000 of value, okay? Now think of that business as it continues to grow. And now it's not selling, only one Makolet, but it has a chain of Makolets, right? And it's doing a lot of business and it's very profitable. And now that same business, you still own 50%, you own 25, and you own 25, is not worth $1 million. It's now worth $5 million. How much now do you own? 2.5, right? Now, right? Now suddenly that's worth a lot more money. That's how you've earned money on your investment.
So what's the downside of equity capital?
What's the downside from whose perspective?
Mine.
You are the investor, and I'm the Makolet owner, right? Yeah. So you, as an investor, you own the business, but you share in the upside and you share in the downside. What if now the business doesn't work out?
You don't pay me back.
I don't pay you back. It's not debt. I don't owe you anything. You're a partner in the business. Now, it's not a partner, you're a shareholder, but in theory, you're a partner in the business. You share in the upside and you share in the downside. On the flip side, right, for me, as the business owner, I have no risk. If the business doesn't work out, I don't owe you anything. But if the business does work out, I don't have 100% of that business. I can't just pay you back your investment and say, here's your $500,000, thank you very much. I'm taking the $5 million for myself, right? That's the way.
You can buy out a share.
I'm sorry?
You can buy out a share.
Correct. You can buy out his shares. But now, if he's going to sell his shares, what is he going to sell it for?
$2.5 million.
$2.5 million, because that's what it's worth, right? So this is the way business works every single day. This is how people make money. Investors put money into companies. They may do it as debt if they think they want to be risk protected, or they'll put it as equity if they want to share in the upside and the downside. Two different models. Now, what happens? Up until this point, public markets aren't included. Let's say you get to a point that you now want to raise a lot of money, where just finding a couple of investors isn't enough. At the same time, you want to give people what's called liquidity, which means that it's the ability for them to start realizing the value of their investment, where they can sell a portion of their shares, get some money, like you said, sell some of their shares, have somebody buy them out on a regular basis. So what you will do, as opposed to doing it on a private-to-private transaction, in other words, you just selling to this guy, say, here, take 25%, take 25% of the shares that I own, and now I own 25 and you owe 25. You could do that. Or what you could do is register your shares on the stock exchange, and that's called going public, IPO, initial public offering. And you may have heard about that, companies that go public or companies that have an IPO, and they go to NASDAQ or go to the New York Stock Exchange and ring the bell, and everybody goes and starts clapping. And you may sometimes see the opening bell at 9:30 in the morning when the market starts trading in New York. And those guys, what they do is now those shares are listed on the stock exchange, and anybody could go in and buy shares. They could buy a single share, they can buy 10 shares, they could buy 100 shares, and a share doesn't necessarily mean 1%. It could be a fraction of a percent, depending on how many shares there are in the company.
How does the stock exchange, what do they gain from that?
What does the stock exchange gain from that? It's a good question. They earn transaction fees on every trade that happens in the exchange.
Oh, in the...
Every time you buy and sell stock, they get a piece. You also, as a company, you pay listing fees to the stock exchange. For, in a sense, what the stock exchange is, it's a marketplace, right? It's a place where sellers and buyers come together in order to transact business, right? You can go, right, and you can go to a supermarket, is the same thing. A supermarket, we're consumers, we're buyers, and there's somebody who's selling, pasta and milk and whatnot, and they want to get to the consumers, right? Tenuva wants to sell its milk to consumers, but it doesn't have a distribution, so they use the supermarket as being the marketplace, where the place that the buyers and the sellers come together and they transact there. The stock exchange is essentially the same thing.
What exactly is the difference between what's going on in those four walls and what's going on online?
Nothing.
It's trading all the same.
Trading is all the same.
So what do you need the four walls of the stock exchange then? You can just do it online.
There's still very large transactions that people want to do with a person in between, or a complex transaction, when you sometimes need a person to be involved. But you could today trade online and unlimited by volume or whatnot,
Right.
and go ahead and do it. I mean, you can go ahead and open up a brokerage account with E-Trade or Fidelity or whatnot, and go buy and sell and day
So the
trade all
person
you
interacting
want.
with in the stock exchange is called a broker.
Correct.
People sometimes elect to do E-Trade, blah, blah, blah.
Correct.
Now, why one or the other? Why not the
It's a question of fees, service, and whatnot. How much time do you have to invest and to go out and find the best rate, the best price? A broker who's
as
live.
opposed to going to the stock exchange. I mean, I'm not sure how that would
Oh,
work.
how you, as a person, individual,
Why
go to the
E-Trade
stock
and
exchange?
not the stock exchange?
Because you, as a private individual, can't go trade on the stock exchange. You have to be a registered broker.
Okay.
It's one of the gimmicks. Everybody's got to make money.
Do they make more money versus like the people in the stock exchange versus the E-Trade guys?
They take a fee also.
The
Everybody takes a fee. The broker takes a fee as well.
Do they normally, let's say equivalent level of wherever they are in the stock company,
Yeah.
they make more money in the four walls of the stock
Yes.
exchange
Yeah.
than the E-Trade guys?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Good?
Yeah.
That background. Okay. So let's take a step back. Some cool stories. I was asking Shmuel, what should I talk about? So I'll talk about what I do, if that's interesting to you, or should I tell you about just some crazy job stories? I don't have, my son has a basketball game at 8 o'clock. Up until then, I'm good. Go ahead.
So if you're an accountant, I'm assuming, and you went to Switzerland, I'm assuming there's like a big deal.
Is there a deal going down in Switzerland? Actually, Switzerland was not a deal. Switzerland was just a management offsite. But there are some times that when I'm traveling, there is a big deal going on. And people also sometimes try and guess. I said, "Oh, Jason, you've been traveling a lot. Is that..." So earlier this year, so in the beginning of this year, I actually traveled a lot. I was away from home a lot. And people said, "Jason, something's going on. You're not home, you're traveling, you're away, you're in California, you're in New York, what's going on?" And I couldn't say, and we did. We were raising money for my company, private company. So we were raising money. Investors invested $35 million into my company.
Your personal company, or you work for?
I'm the CFO, so so I'm one of the executives of the company. So we just raised $35 million, led by Goldman Sachs. You guys may have heard.
Yeah.
My company is called Clarizen. We sell project management and collaboration software in the cloud. So I don't know if you guys know the cloud, but you guys probably do.
Am I explaining all those terms?
Yeah. Project management. So that one is relatively simple. I think about doing work, right? Think about what Shmuel does for a living. Now, he doesn't have project management software, but think about what he does. Managing you guys, making sure that the meals are going to come on time, and that the food is going to come in. And by the way, in order for the food to come in, that means it has to have been ordered a couple of days in advance. Now, of course, what's going to happen, in order for all the food to come, he's got like 3 different suppliers. Now, he's got to make lunch and dinner for you guys, and one of the suppliers doesn't come in. That's a critical path item. If that doesn't happen, a critical path item. In other words, he can't go any further, he can't make lunch if the pasta isn't delivered. So now, he has to make sure, in order to get to the finish line, right? The finish line is you guys sitting down to the table and having lunch, that all of those things that have to happen along the way, meaning plates and cups and food and making sure that the gas bill was paid so he can operate the ovens, and making sure that the pots and all of that stuff was taken care of in order to get to the finish line, which is you guys have lunch, right? Now that is a simple project. Now it may sound simple, it's actually quite difficult, but now think about doing this in putting together a conference, or putting together one of the recruiting trips that Shmuel goes on, where he has to visit 7 cities, 12 cities?
9.
Huh?
9 in
No.
14 days.
9 cities, 14 days.
Rockstar.
Okay? 9 cities in 14 days. Now, by the way, in order to do that, he has to have travel plans in each place. He has to have hotel or accommodations in each place. He has to make sure driving cars in each place. Now, by the way, what of course happens is one of the flights gets delayed. And if one of the flights gets delayed, that means that his next flight isn't going to happen. And make sure that the next flight is going to, if he doesn't hit that next flight, he's not going to make that city where he has to interview 5 guys for next year's yeshiva.
That's a critical path item.
He's right, because he can't go.
It's a great phrase.
It can't go any further down the path unless that thing happens. Each one of those things is a critical path item. So he's managing, when he puts together this trip, he plans in advance, and he tries to build in what's called contingencies, right? To make sure, if this doesn't happen the right way, what's going to be my plan to how I work around it to make sure that I still get to that deliverable, that event that I have to be at.
Essentially making the critical path item no longer a critical path item.
Or to have a alternative path around the critical path item.
Always have like a plan B and plan C.
To the extent that you can. There are sometimes you can't. Like, for example, if it's, let me give you an example. Shmuel used to teach bar mitzvah kids. you can do all the planning and make sure the kid is prepared for his bar mitzvah. If he's sick on the morning of his bar mitzvah and he can't get up and lane, you got a problem. Now, you can have a backup plan. He could get up there and lane, and the shul will still have davening. But what's going to happen? That kid, if he's sick, ain't going to lane. And so that's a critical path item that you can't solve for, right? Because the mother is still wants to see a little bubble go ahead and lane. Now, that he can't solve for, right? You can try and do everything you can and what. Now, this is on a personal level. Imagine that doing this as a company. It's a company where you have customers, and you have to deliver projects to your customer, and you have to make sure that you deliver what you promise them. And it may be a report, it may be a device, it may be a project, it may be any number of things that you have to deliver to your customer, and that's what they're paying you money for. How do you manage all of your resources, both inside your company and at your customer, to make sure that the project is completed on time? Our software helps you manage all that. Okay?
Can I ask the H question? How?
No,
Later?
I'll be glad to do that.
Okay, have you seen the movie Wolf of Wall Street?
Yes.
Alright, so does the
Am I supposed to admit to that online?
No, not at all.
Your Honor, I have no recollection.
Right.
They teach you that in CFO school. I'll tell you that in a minute.
No, so what does that company do? What, his company?
He was a broker.
So that's a broker company.
That's a broker.
And he just makes money from people paying his guys.
He makes money by selling stock.
So
and
just the
selling
fee,
it.
that's the only money
Correct,
he's making.
correct. But if you do enough volume, then
You
he's...
could become
Oh,
a
no,
millionaire.
penny
just-
stocks, he ran the penny stocks?
Yeah.
He ran penny stock, but he could do it with any kind of
You
stock.
become
Goldman
like
Sachs,
a billionaire
is that the
just for
company?
the fees.
No, Goldman Sachs does not run scams.
No, I'm saying, but they have that.
Let me say that again to my... Yeah.
So you could basically make billions of dollars off of the transaction fees?
Basically,
You can make billions of dollars off of most anything if you do it right.
If you make $1 billion.
Okay, if you do it right, and that's quite frankly an important lesson in life. If you put your mind to anything, you could probably achieve much more than you think you can. And it's about volume and it's about execution. It's about leadership and prioritization. It's about understanding what you want to do, how you're going to go about doing it, and then getting it done. Not taking no for an answer,
Sales for sure.
right? Exactly.
Sales for sure. Let's go.
It's by the way, it's one of the most important things in life. There is almost nothing, and I shouldn't say nothing, but almost nothing that you can't achieve if you put your mind to it. And that's something that, again, even when somebody says no, and we have plenty of examples in just building the community that we're in, where people said no, and we said, okay, I understand no, and they said, okay, no is no. I'll tell you just a simple story. We daven in a small school, that's where our shul is currently. And it was coming Yom Noraim, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and we had to find a bigger place. And so a number of people got together and they arranged with the school. They have a gymnasium, and they allowed us to daven in the gymnasium, or in the auditorium, I should call it. It wasn't a gymnasium, an auditorium for Yom Noraim. Had plenty of room. And it was great. The guys did a great job in securing it. Then came Sukkot, and we wanted to use it again. And the school said no. They said, we can't. We really, this is a donor-funded facility. They told us we're not supposed to do it. We really can't do it. And people said, you sure? We really liked it. They said, you can't do it. They came back and said, look, can't be done. Can't be done. We'll have to be in the, in the school, which is less than ideal for Sukkot. So I'll tell you, I didn't like that answer. And I said, the donors really said that you can't use it for a shul that's going to, that just didn't make sense to me. So I picked up the phone and I called one of the donors. I said, this is what's happening, is it? And they said, no, that's not really what we meant. We wanted to make sure that it's available for events and whatnot, but if you guys want to use it, it's Sukkot. I mean, of course you can. So well, can you help us out and get that? So he made a call. And then the answer came back, well, That's really not the problem. The problem is that the building doesn't have a certificate of occupancy. It wasn't approved by the building authority in the city to occupy and use the building. Okay, so now we can't use it. We'd love to let you. We really shouldn't have let you done it for Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, but we got a special exception for the market. If you got a special exception once, can't we get a special exception again? No, can't be done. The only way we could do, okay, what if we got you the certificate of occupancy? Well, you'll never be able to get us the certificate of occupancy. Wait, but what if we could? You can't, what? If you can do that, you can dominate. Well, P.S., we spent 2 days on the phone talking to this person in the city council, and that's when and literally 2 hours before Yontif, I got texted a copy, and I'm trying to pull it up, but I could show you, a copy of the signed certificate of occupancy for the building, and we were allowed to go use it for Sukkot. Now, true story, happened a couple of weeks ago. Now, why am I telling you this story? I'm telling you this story to tell you, people said it couldn't happen. The answer was no. Now, I'm not saying that the answer wasn't no. It really was no. There really were reasons that it couldn't. But if you put your mind to it, and you're able to figure out what needs to be done in order to make the answer yes, many times you'll be able to succeed. And that's something that you should, by the way, carry it in everything you do in life. The first time the girl that you really want to go out with says no, it's okay to try and call one of her friends and say, but I think it would be really great if we went out together. Now, doing that over and over again may get a restraining order put against you, but doing it in the right way just shows persistence, and persistence is a good thing. Employers love that.
Until you get restraining.
Until you get your restraining order. That's right. You don't want to go break it, because that you could get arrested for. I have never been arrested. I wanted. So we're good on the going public thing.
Yeah.
I'll come back to that in a minute. I'll come back to that in a couple of minutes. When I started my career at Price Waterhouse. Price Waterhouse is one of the largest accounting firms in the world. And this was I graduated college in 1993. Okay, are you guys born yet? No. Okay.
Almost.
So I graduated college in 1993. And in 1993, there really weren't so many people yet who wore yarmulkes in the workplace. The doctors already wore yarmulkes, right? Doctors already had started, Einstein, YU had a medical school, and those guys had started wearing yarmulkes in the hospital. But the business folk really weren't wearing yarmulkes yet. And I had to make a decision. Rav Moshe has a tshuva as to, do you need to wear a yarmulke in the workplace, or don't you need to wear, or what happens if it's going to affect you getting a parnasa, having a job, all sorts of things. And I had to make a decision, right? I had my first set of interviews. We had them on campus in school. And there were 6 large accounting firms at the time, and the big 6 they were called, and I had interviews with all the 6, and I had callbacks. In other words, they were inviting me back to the office with all 6 of the large firms. But now, when I was interviewing in school, in YU, so everybody understood you had to wear a yarmulke. It was part of the dress code. But now when I was going into their offices, I had to decide, was I walking in there in a yarmulke or not? It was the first real test that I had with being from in the workplace. And I made the decision that I was going to wear a yarmulke. And I said, you know what? I'm having opportunities with all these 6 firms. They all invited me back. One of them is going to give me a job. So I believe. That was my cocky, stubborn attitude. And I said, the folks that won't give me a job just because I'm wearing a yarmulke, I don't want to, right? I don't want to work for them. Now, there were a couple of people who wore yarmulkes. When I got to Price Waterhouse, there were Jews at Price Waterhouse. There were even Shomer Shabbos Jews at Price Waterhouse. There was not a single person in the entire New York office, thousands of people, who wore a yarmulke at Price Waterhouse. I was the first person to wear a yarmulke as an employee of Price Waterhouse, in Price Waterhouse. And I'm proud to say that that has helped me. Again, it was the right decision for me, right? Today, 20 some odd years later, where, depending on where you work and what part of the globe you're in, wearing a yarmulke is not uncommon anymore. There are places in the world where it still is uncommon to see a Jew in a yarmulke. I'm at the point in my career and at this, the level in my career that it makes no difference to me. In other words, I walk into every business meeting that I'm in and I wear my yarmulke. I'll tell you the story. When we started I worked in New York, and when you start working in these firms, they put you in a training class, right? A group of students, and they start training you how you're going to do your job. So we were part of a training class, a 3-week training course, and then finished the course, and we were ready to get assigned to our first client. So we were sitting around one day, and it was the summer of 1993, right before Rosh Hashanah. And one of the girls who was in my training class happened to be Jewish, turned to me and said, "Jason, Rosh Hashanah is coming up." I said, "Yeah, I know." I said, "What are you doing?" I said, "What do you mean, what am I doing?" She said, "Well, are you working? Are you taking off?" I said, "Not taking the days off, not working." She said, "1 day or 2?" I said, "Both days." And she was from a Reform family, and she said, "Really, she said, "But they don't give those days off." I said, "So I'll take them as vacation days." That's what it is. Now, sitting with us around was an African American woman who was part of our group, our training group. Girl by the, can I say the name?
LaDasha?
She's never gonna, huh?
LaDasha?
No, Kathy Ann Edwards. Remarkable. The Jewish girl, I don't remember. Her name was Kathy Ann Edwards. Now, Kathy Ann, she says, "Oh, I know Rosh Hashanah. I know." She said she was from Crown Heights. She lived in Crown Heights. "I know Rosh Hashanah. That's when the women come out in their Sunday finest and walk down and go to the temple. And they go at their Sunday finest. And the men, but what's up, Jason? What's up with the men? They're always in that black. Why do they only wear black? I mean, they're always in black coats. And why is that? And the strings. What's up with the string?" And I'm sitting there, and I'm, there's one thing. Okay, you're a minority, also. There was a time in this world where people talked about your people and pretended that they knew what they were all about. And I couldn't. And she said, "No, Jacob, I'm not talking. You're different. But those guys with the strings, and they're flying in there." And I just couldn't anymore. And I said, "The strings? You're talking about the strings? You mean like this?" And I pulled out my tzitzis. The girl turned white. Shattered her understanding of the world. And true story, I became known as the guy that had the strings. But yeah, but again, there was a pride. I came home, and it's been 21 years. I still love getting that rise out of the story, but it's a true story. But there's a pride of being a firm person, right? Now, at the same time, leaving early on Friday is not an easy thing, and understanding that that you're not available on Friday afternoon, or in the middle of on Yom Tov, or on Shabbos, when a deal is going down, or when a client or a customer needs something, and you are unavailable, trust me, is a challenge. It's a nisayon. And you guys are sitting here in yeshiva going, "Are you crazy? Come on. We're sitting in yeshiva. Shabbos comes, we turn off our phones, we don't..." Trust me, it's a, yeah.
how many, if any, deals did you lose because you were Shomer Shabbos?
I am so glad that you asked that question. So I have never lost a deal because of that. But I have a great Shabbos story. A great Shabbos story. So after I left, I'll tell you how it comes about. So there are some personalities in this story that you may have heard of. So after I left Price Waterhouse, I joined a company called Shopping.com. Shopping.com is a shopping search engine on the internet, right? It goes back, you say, like, okay, shopping, search, internet, you sound like my grandfather. But back in 1999, search was brand new. Google was just 3 years old, right? And search was the new thing. AOL had gone public about 3 years before, 1996. 1996, 1997.
This was 3 years old, 1999.
I think so. I think I found it in 96, something like that. Maybe 3-4 years old. It's not that much older. Okay. And we actually did a lot of business with Google. I knew some of the senior folks at Google, beforehand. Like, I wish I took that job, But anyway, and after Shopping.com, I'll come back to the Shopping.com story in a minute, but after Shopping.com, I went to another company. We took Shopping.com public, right, and had the IPO, sold the shares, moved the company out to California. I was living in New York. I said, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm moving on to the next thing. And I joined a company that was called Sayota. Sayota.
Japanese?
No. It was a U.S.-Israel company, just like Shopping.com was,
Yeah.
where the sales and marketing parts of the business were all in New York. And all of the development, right, the engineers and the development guys were all here in Israel. The company was founded by 4 entrepreneurs. And the CEO of the company, right, the head guy in the company, was a fellow by the name of Naftali Bennett. How many of you guys know the name Naftali Bennett? So I was his CFO, right? I work with Naftali, and we're still friends today. And about a year after I joined, we sold the company to a U.S. company called RSA Security for $145 million. Small deal. This is what I call my Gan Eden story, right? When I'm trying to get into Gan Eden, and they say, Jason, you don't pass the bar. This is the story I'm ready to tell them. So we were negotiating this deal. It was right after Thanksgiving. So we were, David Glatt? David Glatt was the lawyer on this deal. So we were getting the deal documents, in other words, the agreement, the sale agreement, and purchase agreement, came over to us right on Thanksgiving weekend. And what we planned to do was the acquirer, the company that was going to buy us, was based up in Boston. We were based in New York. And we said, you know what? We're reviewing the documents. The best way to get this deal done, we'll fly up to Boston. We'll spend a day or two there until we've ironed out all of the issues, until we agree to all the terms, and then sign the deal and be done. So I was talking to my lawyers, and I said, no big deal. It should take us a day or two to do this. We're pretty close. I'll just pack a little bag, and we should be home in 2 days, right? They're like, Jason, take an extra pair of socks. It's not going to be 2 days. This is a $145 million deal. That's not something that'll get done, overnight. I said, you guys are making too much of it. We fly up Monday afternoon. Monday night, we start negotiations. We work till, I think, midnight that night. Tuesday night, we flew up Monday night. Tuesday was the first day. We worked till midnight. Wednesday night, we worked till 2 o'clock in the morning. Thursday night, we pulled an all-nighter to try and get this deal done. And we get down, there's like one or two outstanding issues. And we have to work through it, and we're going through it. And one of the at that point, at like 4 o'clock in the morning on Thursday night, one of the lawyers from the other side say, we need to see a copy of this agreement. Right? Some agreement that we had signed 6 years ago, 6 years before. Go find a copy of some piece of paper that was some, no, we must have a copy of that to see that there's nothing that can affect this deal. Without it, we can't sign. It's 4 o'clock in the morning on Thursday. I want to fly home for Shabbos. We wait till 6 o'clock in the morning. I call and I wake up Naftali. Naftali was in New York. I said, Naftali, here's the status. We're about ready to close the deal. There are 2 or 3 things that have to get done that I don't think, but there's one thing, we've got to find a copy of this contract. I said, I don't know. You've got to go turn over the office and find a copy of this contract. He says, whatever it takes, Jason, we'll do it. Well, as soon as people get in, I'll call people now to get into the office, 7 o'clock. He says, Jason, it's Friday. He said, don't worry. I'm going to book you, right, again, I lived in New York. I'm going to book you on the shuttle, on the airport shuttle, the Delta shuttle, every hour on the hour. 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock. You'll have a seat on every plane, so when we're ready to close, you can get out of there and make it home for Shabbos. All right, so he gets into the office, 8 o'clock in the morning, nobody can find this thing. 9 o'clock in the morning, nobody can find this thing. He calls me, he says, Jason, I don't know where it is. You know what, just get on the plane, come home, we'll figure it out. I go, Tommy, I'm not leaving. We've got to get this deal done. If it doesn't get done today, they're going to come up with more things. We're going to get the deal done. Just keep on looking for it. And I called my wife and I said, Han, I'm not sure I'm going to make it home for Shabbos. I may be stuck here in Boston. She said, listen, you've been working all week. You've been pulling all-nighters. You're going to come home for Shabbos. You're going to sleep the whole thing away. You're useless to me anyway. I might as well sleep in the... We get up, I said, and I'm watching, and I have like reservations on the plane until 1 o'clock in the morning. 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Shabbos is late November. Shabbos is like at 4 o'clock in New York. At 12:30, I get a call. They found the contract. It was attached in another file. They found it. Fax it over. Listen, everything's great. We're calling a meeting to finish up the deal. It's already too late. I'm saying I'm not flying home for Shabbos. We made plans to stay in the hotel, and we had friends that lived in Boston. We'd walk over there for meals. We ordered food in just in case and whatever. We set a meeting, a conference call, for 3 o'clock in the afternoon to finalize the deal. We already have all the signatures, all the signature pages.
3 o'clock before Shabbos?
I'm sorry?
3 o'clock Friday afternoon?
3 o'clock Friday afternoon. Shabbos in Boston that week was 3:55. Okay? 3 o'clock in the afternoon we have a meeting, a conference call. Naftali's in New York. Their CEO is with us in Boston. The lawyers on both sides of here represent me, and their CEO is on the other side. He's got like 7 lawyers, and we have 2 or 3, and okay, and Naftali's on the phone and said, okay, this issue is left, and one, I said, okay, no problem, this one, no problem. Last point, we'd have talk about it for 15, 20 minutes, done. And the CEO says, Naftali, you have a deal. And he says, thank you, Art Coviello, thank you. It's great to partner with you, blah, blah, blah. Another couple of minutes, people talking. Thank you very much. Click, we're done. Everybody shakes hands, and they start walking out. The CEO gets up and walks out the room. I say, great guys, we're all done. This is great. Their lawyer turns around and says, well, now I want to go back to section 6. I said, go back to section 6. Don't you understand? We said the deal is, we're closed, we're done. Deal is done. He turns and he says, it's done when I say it's done. Now, it's now like 3:35, almost 3:40. I pick myself up, and I have a copy of the signature page, our agreement, our signed agreement, and he's sitting in front of me, and he has a copy of his signature pages, right, that we exchanged to say the deal is done. I said, I made it very clear to you that I have a limitation as a Sabbath observer. I said, we set the meeting accordingly. There was a limited set of issues that were open. We finalized all the issues. The deal is done. And so, and I picked myself up, leaned over the table, handed him my signature page, and went, picked up his, took it, and I said, congratulations. It's been a pleasure working with you. If anybody has any issues, I'm available in 25 hours. David, let's go. And we picked ourselves up and walked out of the room. And that's how Naftali Bennett sold his company for $145 million. The PS of that story is a couple of weeks later, we had a closing dinner, right, to celebrate that the deal was done. And one of the people from the other company turned to me and he said, I want to let you know, I was so impressed. A guy, Ted Kamenek, not Jewish, no relationship to Jews, not. He says, I was so impressed with how you handled yourself and your commitment to your religious ideals that you were willing to pick yourself up in the middle of the negotiations. And you said that the deal was done, and that deal was done. I will never forget that. And said, you asked me, how many deals did you lose because of Shabbos? That's a deal that, as far as I'm concerned, we got because of Shabbos. If we wouldn't have closed the deal right then, it would have dragged on for another couple of weeks, because the lawyers could always find more things to do.
So
true story.
So he was supposed to give you that paper of his own volition? And
Correct.
Just very
I just said
sly.
thank you, and
Swiper, no swiping.
that's right. Swiper, no swipe. Yeah. Dora the Explorer wasn't around in those days, Girl.
Why didn't you just pick it up to begin with? Why did you let him Section C6? You could've just
I
done-
never anticipated, right? What should happen is that he hands me mine, I hand him his. For me to pick it up and take it is a little chutzpah. But
So did that make an impression on Ted Kamenek?
I don't know which one it was, but it was the whole thing that was that he said. Which piece of it was it? The picking up and walking out? That was.
How many years were you,
With Naftali?
yeah.
16 months.
Oh, wow.
16 months from the start to finish. And then we sold the
And
business.
when this deal happened, how long were you with him for?
16 months.
Oh, that was it at the end.
Yeah. Yeah.
Could you explain a little bit about the company you have now?
So sure. So the company that I have now is also a U.S.-Israel company. In other words, we have about 100 people here in Israel, about 60 people in San Mateo, California, and 5 or 6 people in London, 1 or 2 people in Japan. And we sell this software, this project management software that I was telling you about before, to companies of all sizes. Right? So we develop it. The engineers here in Israel develop the software, are constantly adding functionality and the like. And then we have salespeople both here in Israel and London and the U.S. that sell it to clients around the world. I am the CFO of the company, which means that I run all of the finances of the company, in charge of the budgets, the billing, making sure that the company has the money to run and uses it wisely. Or supposedly, that's what I'm supposed to do. And I'm also involved on a lot of the sales contracts, meetings with investors, meetings with the banks. Right before Thanksgiving, so earlier this year, we raised $35 million, so that was a deal that I ran to make sure that investment came in. And then a couple of weeks ago, we closed another $10 million of financing from a bank. That was something that I did. And this is what I do for a living. In other words, like Shmuel said, work with the companies, getting them ready to go from a small business to becoming a much larger business, selling tens and hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue.
So you go from company to company?
So me personally, yeah. So I like to work with companies of a certain size. And what's happened in my career, I've gone from one company to another company after we've had what's called an exit event. An exit event means it's either we've taken the company public, right? So they've gotten listed on the stock exchange, and so shareholders made money and employees made money, or we've actually turned around and sold the business, like we did in Naftali's case or in one of my other companies, and shareholders made money, employees made money, and the business keeps on going, right? Each one of those companies still exists today as part of a much larger company, but I've gone on to different roles to do it again.
So you start when the company is private, help them go public, then you go to another company that's starting up.
To do the same thing.
Ah.
Yeah, that's what I did.
So how does it, little bit keys to your software? Saying it's got like graphic organizers, like how's it work?
So it's, now you've got the keys to the software. Now you're gonna, you know, I have never written a line of code in my life. I don't even know if code is written from left to right or right to left. But we actually think of it like a massive flow chart, right? Of here's a task that, you know, some team member has to do, and what's the due date of that task? And here's another task that somebody has to do, and what's the due date of that task? And by the way, task number 5 has to happen before task number 7 can start, right? Because it has a ingredient that 7 needs in order for it to start. So if task number 5 is not running on time, then task number 7 is going to be delayed, and then the overall project is going to be delayed. And by the way, if it's taking more time, that means that it's costing more to do it because time is money. And so what's the increase in the cost now of delivering that project, and how does that impact the profitability of that project? All of that is built into the software.
Like minute by minute, like how?
Hour by hour.
Really?
Yeah.
So what were you doing on the ski slopes in Switzerland?
So we had a management offsite, a strategic planning session, where this happens often, right? Where what you try to do is not only execute what you're doing or day by day, month by month, but also have a strategic plan. How are you going to continue to grow your business, right? And so we look at different parts of the business, right? And what's working well and what's not working well. And what's working well, how do we strengthen it and make it do better? And what's not working well, how do we strengthen that and also so that it should perform? We've looked at things like, should we expand into Australia and Japan, right? Should we increase our investment in the US or in Europe? Should we hire more engineers in order to develop a certain functionality? So you turn around and you guys are saying, why isn't the answer yes to all? Right? Yeah, sure. If it's going to grow the business, just keep on doing it. What are you doing?
Money.
Right, money. It's all about what kind of money are you willing to invest or are able to invest do you have, and how much time is it going to take that investment that you're making to produce results? And so you have to prioritize like anything else. You may want to buy anything
what you want to use your money for.
Exactly. And so that's what we were doing. We had 6 of us together, the CEO, the head of product, the head of development, the head of sales, and the head of marketing, and me. We were there for a couple of days in Lucerne. And again, there is a place where no kosher restaurants, right? So I had to make sure that I ordered in kosher food. Not always is that something that's so easily available. You start getting used to eating salad a lot, or fresh vegetables, fresh fruit. Understand that even milk, which we understand, you can go into any supermarket in the US and pick up a container of milk, right? Have it milk in your coffee. Well, the reason that you can do that in the United States is because
FDA.
the FDA says that you can only
Use cow.
you can only use cow milk. So Rav Moshe's famous tshuva that you could rely on that, right? That's not true in all over the globe. There are places in the globe that they will milk other things, and so suddenly you have to make sure. Can you have even something as simple as a cup of coffee is a kashrus issue. You have a salad, and you say, okay, I know that I can't have blue cheese dressing on my salad, but listen, just have oil and vinegar, right? Just a simple oil and vinegar dressing. Well, the question is, what kind of vinegar is it? Vinegar very often is made from grapes. Grapes, now you're starting to get into a yayin nesach issue or stam yenam issue. And all of these things are practical halakhic shilas. Even on the things that you think are so simple, it's not so simple. Even the potato chips, the same Pringles potato chips that you have here, manufactured in Europe is a different manufacturing plant. And it doesn't necessarily mean that the oil that they use in the US, and therefore the Pringles carry an OU on it, is the same oil that they use in the production line that's made out of Germany, and maybe it's a non-kosher oil. That same potato chips, you need to know whether it's kosher or non-kosher. And unlike the US, where you have all the kashrus symbols, OU, kuf K, start K, whatever it is, in Europe, most of the countries don't have symbols on the food products, on the packaged food products. And what they have is they have lists, and you have to know where to get the list from and whose list, and you have to also speak the language. Of course, do you speak Swiss German?
Not today.
My Swiss German isn't so good. The ungeschlachte whatever, I don't know what that is, but that kind of means tea biscuits or something like that. But I don't know if it is. But knowing all this stuff and knowing what you can rely on is very important. And that will determine how well you eat or how poorly you eat in all these countries. So traveling in the US is a lot easier than traveling in Europe. And I'm not even going into traveling to the Far East. I've got a great story about Japan, but go ahead.
So are you essentially a private investment banker?
I am not an investment banker.
No, I'm saying, right.
Who, me personally?
Yeah.
No, I am an
So what's the
officer
difference?
of the company.
So what's the difference between you and, let's say, an investment banker?
Investment bankers,
Besides for you actually putting up money for the company.
I don't put up the
Well,
money.
that's like besides for that. 'Cause
So
that,
what the investment bankers typically do is they're like a real estate broker. And I know will make all my investment banker friends really upset that I called them that. But they take, again, companies and are marketing them to investors to invest in the company or to buy the company, right? So they're that person who's going out there and making that match or suggesting that and suggesting the deal.
they don't deal at all in growth of the company?
They don't deal at all in the growth of the company.
Right.
They're just a middleman to bring, again, a buyer and a seller or an investor and a company together.
Is growth more like the venture capitalist side?
So again, the venture capitalists are, again, investors.
Right, that's more of the money, but I'm
They're-
saying they
they're-
also deal with the growth.
They like to think that they deal with the growth. What they really do,
Who are these guys?
venture capitalists, they're the people who put in money into a private company. Goldman Sachs is really more of a banking firm, right? They're investment banking, brokerage, but they do have private capital investing that they'll go in, which is like venture capital, that's just later stage company. What those guys the venture capitalists will sit on the board of the company and be a director of the company and work with the management team to be a sounding board to say, okay, here are the things that we, as you're making decisions, we'll kind of approve or give you our input. But in the end of the day, what the venture capitalists want to do is hire a management team who is going to manage and be responsible for the growth of the company. They're not the people who are making the decisions day in and day out. That's what the CEO and guys like me and the guys like the head of sales are doing every single day. We're running the company. We're hiring the employees. We're dealing with the customers. We're putting out the fires when something doesn't go the way that it's supposed to go. And the investors or the venture capitalists are the directors who provide a sounding board and also capital. They invest in the company and provide access to cash that's so important to grow the business. Excellent question. Yes?
You define back office financing.
Back office financing or back office finance? I don't know what back office financing is.
I might have made it to ING.
So back office finance is all of the functions that you need to do in a company in order to make it run, like paying bills, like issuing invoices, like paying salaries, payroll, like making sure taxes are paid, like producing financial reports and tax returns. It's the stuff that can be done in a back office and doesn't have to be visible to the customer. Think of it like the kitchen in a restaurant. Nobody wants to see how the food is made. They just want to see,
It's grinding. It's grinding work.
they just want to see the pretty stuff on the plate when it comes out.
Right.
Right. So the same thing, back office functions, and by the way, the back finance is a back office function. It doesn't have to be, the customer doesn't have to see all of the details that go into doing that stuff. So it can be done, like I say, in the back office as opposed to the front office. But there are many other functions that are also back office, like support, like IT, like computer systems and cabling, and the receptionist is probably more front office because she interfaces with customers or with people every single day. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
How are we doing on time?
So really quick, do you summarize what exactly you do?
Yeah, I talk on the phone and play on my computer a lot. So I know that's what I tell my kids. What I end up doing is I manage a team of people who are responsible to do everything that has to do with the dollar sign in the company. Whether that's paying people salaries, whether that's paying bills, whether that's collecting money from customers, invoicing the customers, dealing with the bank and making sure that the banks are reconciled and are in balance, dealing with investors, right, and making sure that they get the reports that are needed, filing the tax returns with the various different authorities.
So basically, like companies hire you to basically be the project manager to help their company go public?
Yes, but it's even more than that. It's even running it on a day-to-day basis. In other words, think of all those things that I just talked about. I haven't yet talked about getting ready to go public. But think of all those things that I just talked about. That is stuff that happens literally every day, right? Every single person that sends a bill has to be paid.
So what do they do?
I sign all the checks in the company.
So what do they do once they go public and you leave?
First of all, I don't always have to leave. I can stay with the company, and if it's not me, then it's somebody else who'll take that job. Every company that's public has a chief financial officer. It's somebody who is responsible for all that, responsible for the budget of the company, responsible for the forecast, right? The budget is what we're doing now this year. We have to also have like a little crystal ball and predict to the market what we think we're going to do next year and setting those goals. And try and make sure that we're taking steps today that are going to produce the results that we want next year and over the next 3 years. And that's a lot of what I spend my time doing.
So you're basically the head honcho until the company goes big, and then you give it over to someone else.
I'm the second head honcho. The real head honcho is the CEO.
He doesn't have to stop, that's what he said.
No, I'm saying
Even when he gives it over public, you still have to be there.
That still has to be there. I may do that for a period of time and then go on because I want to go always.
Yeah.
I like going to find new
it sounds
things.
like you like
I like
big
the piece of
companies going from small to big.
exactly. I like that a lot. That's what I like to do. But there are a lot of guys who are CFOs of just big companies, right? And they only work with publicly traded companies, and they like that kind of work, right? It's just another thing they do. But the beauty of it is, for me, is I get to go meet customers. I work with customers. I work with my employees around the globe. I get to go I travel all over the place, and that has good things and bad things about it. I just came back from a trip to the States, to Europe and the States, and I was supposed to land on Friday at 9:30 in the morning back here in Israel. The flight was delayed by 3 hours, a little over 3 hours. Now Shabbos again started at 4 o'clock. Right? When you land at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, you're starting to worry. Think 10 hours before, and you're figuring out how much longer is this delay going to be, and do I have to get off the plane because I'm going to land when it's after Shabbos or not? Those are real challenges. You have to think about those things. It's a good part and a bad part. You have to plan all those things in advance. I've had a trip early this year to Japan. My first time in Japan. And we went out, and there was no way for me to get back before Shabbos. And so there was no way to get back before Shabbos. I was going to spend Shabbos in Japan, in Tokyo. What do you do? Chabad house. Thank God for Chabad. So there's a great Chabad house in Tokyo. And I called them up, and it was right after Pesach, and I was so nervous that it was literally the week after Pesach. Matter of fact, I flew out to Tokyo on what you guys would call Achron Shel Pesach. In other words, Pesach ended for us, Israelis, on day 7. Right? There are only 7 days of Pesach. Right? You guys, Americans or foreigners, keep an 8th day. So that day, your 8th day of Pesach was the day that I flew. Right? I was allowed to fly, and by the time I landed in Tokyo, it was the next day. So it was already after Yom Tov for everybody. So I get on the plane, and I was just worried, where am I going to find kosher, what kind of food are they going to have over there? It's right after Yom Tov. They probably had a big bash of Yom Tov, and it's still people off, and are they going to have a minyan, and what? He said, don't worry, everything will be okay. Finally got in touch with them. I go to the Chabad house on Friday afternoon, and we start waiting for a minyan, and they get a minyan, and I'm sitting there, take out a siddur, and I start davening, and I don't know, I guess the Chabad rabbi kind of figured out, this guy knows a little, I knew how to read, right? It was, and then we went upstairs for the meal, and he says, the custom here, and there were a bunch of different people there, some of them locals, right? Regular guys that come every single week, and some of them are other business travelers. It says, the custom here is that everybody introduces themselves and shares a thought on either the Parsha or this time of year, or something that you want to share with the people. He said, why don't you start? And points to me. I said, why should I start? I said, why don't you? He says, because I think you probably have a Dvar Torah to say. Okay. So I pulled out a short Dvar Torah, right? I said, I introduced myself and whatever. And as the meal goes on, he turns to me and he says, Jason, you wouldn't happen to be a Baal Koreh, are you? I said, why do you ask? He says, because I suspect you are. And if you are, it would be great if you can lay tomorrow so I can go to sleep. I said, what time are we starting tomorrow, Rabbi? He said, well, this is Chabad. Not before 10. And so P.S., I laned in Tokyo. I was the Baal Koreh in Tokyo that week. And that's why I was so impressed. Great skill to have, to be a Baal Koreh. Keep it up. You never know when you're going to find yourself in Tokyo and they're looking for a Baal Koreh, and you can say, yep, I could do that. But here, that was, so that was my Tokyo experience. I was great and whatnot. But, and the interesting thing about Tokyo, one of my buddies who was there, also a frum guy, who's here, said to me, listen, have a great time, bring me back some sushi. I said, are you kidding me? I said, not kosher, no kosher. I looked. I said, Jason, what are you talking about? You don't need, and I said, and you don't understand, Michael. I said, they eat it, the Japanese, if it's in the water, they eat it. And I'm telling you, they have, fish, or I don't know if that's what you call it, the most oddball sea creatures, whatever it is, they eat it all, right? And most of that is not kosher. He said, what you do, he says, no, I've been to Japan before. What you do is you go to not a sushi place, which could have all sorts of things in the sushi, but a sashimi place, which is just the raw fish, no rice, no nothing. Have them take out a fresh, clean knife and ask them just for tuna and salmon. I said, really? He said, remember, you could see, right? When you sit at these places, you could actually see that it's a tuna and a salmon. You could actually see the scales on the fish before they cut it off. And the halacha is that if you see a fish that has scales, we know that it has fins. A a fish that has a fin doesn't necessarily mean that it has scales. And in order for it to be a kosher fish, you need both fins and scales. But the halacha of the Gemara Nori says that if you see scales, you know that there was a fin. And that's why when you package fish, if you go and you look at fish that's packaged, like salmon or whatnot, they always package it with the skin still on it. So you can see that there were scales on it, and that's how you know that it's a kosher fish. Anyway, so I was at this business meeting with, and they said, all right, thank you very much. We want to go out to dinner. And they looked, and the person I was with said, you know, Jason's going to have some issues. Don't worry, he'll be okay. The Japanese get very, very nervous. I'm like, because it was like a lack of respect to me that they couldn't serve me kosher food. And they said, no, don't worry about it. I said, this happens to me all the time. Please don't. No, we must find something. There must be I said, really, there's no kosher restaurant here. Don't worry. Now I'm embarrassed, right? They said, no, there must be something we could do. I said, you know, the only thing we could do is, you know, if there was a sashimi, not sushi, just sashimi. He said, a sashimi place you can eat at? I said, you know, but only, no problem. They changed the restaurant. We go into one of these, walk a couple blocks, go into a Japanese, real Japanese sashimi place. I mean, take your shoes off, sit on the floor, you know, whatnot. And he starts, the head guy, who was a senior, you know, executive at this company we were meeting with, turns to him and starts telling him in Japanese that what my limitations are, I gather. The chef, you know, bows, and, you know, the sous chef is bowing there. He comes out, he takes out a brand new knife, still in the packaging. He shows me, he brings it over to me and bows again and says, can he open it? I said, yes, you can open it. And he's over, and literally takes the fish, shows me it, cuts. I have never seen tuna that thick. Cut fresh tuna, right? It's all raw, it's not cooked. Fresh tuna, fresh salmon, and I'm sitting there eating it with the wooden chopsticks. So and was finally able to have dinner with everybody else sitting in Tokyo. They then asked, you know, what do you want to drink? And that is wine. And I said, I can't drink wine. I said, what, you have to have, and with the Japanese, the drinking, meaning the hard drinking, the liquor is a big part of what they do. They said, can you have a, so I said, well, I can have a scotch. I could have a whiskey. But they bring out great whiskey, right? All single malt, etc. And then they ask if I would like some sake. Now, I've never had sake before. You know what sake is?
Rice wine.
Right? I hear the word wine. Wine to me says grapes. Grapes is a problem. But if it's just fermented rice, it's not a problem. There's no stam orez, there's only stam yenam, right? And so I go through this whole thing, back and forth in slight Japanese, the couple of words that I knew. You sure that it's just rice, there's no grape? No grape. And so that was that. On the way back, I decided I was going to fly back through California to go visit my US office. Now here's the funny thing. When you go from Japan and cross the Pacific back to California, you cross the international date line. And so you actually land before you took off. Okay, I'm going to let you say that again. You're still scratching your head. How does that work? You literally go back in time. And so I was there on Shabbos. And I was looking at flights. And there was a flight back to California that left on late Motzei Shabbos. I said, great, I'll take that flight and get in. And
can't because it lands on Shabbos.
It landed on Shabbos. I couldn't take the flight, and I had to take the flight on Sunday. I took a flight on Sunday afternoon that landed Sunday morning. Now here's the I was scratching my head. What do I do? What do I do about davening? So when I left, it was already after Zman Mincha. So I davened Shachris in Tokyo. And by the time I landed back in San Francisco, it was, late into Shacharis time. Whether it was after, I don't remember, it was after Zman Kriya Shema, Zman Tefillah, but I said I had already davened Shacharis that day. I knew that was okay. I had an interesting shaila. Should I daven Mincha in Tokyo? And if I daven Mincha in Tokyo, would that count for my Mincha of the day? Because after all, I was going back in time and then experiencing the start of Zman Mincha again. In other words, when I landed, it was still time for Shacharis. It wasn't yet time to daven Mincha. And so now I was going to be in a place that was starting a Chiyuv Zman Mincha again. Would I have a new Chiyuv to daven Mincha even though I already daven Mincha? So I didn't know the answer to that. So guess what I did?
Daven.
I davened just when I got to California. I didn't daven in Tokyo, but I got myself up. But again, one of these wild things that you would never have to think about, but it's literally day in and day out of a business traveler, of being a frum business guy, and understanding the priority of finding time to daven, finding time to find your kosher food, finding time to learn, finding time, and still excel at what you do in business, in ethics, in community involvement, in family life.
You said the strip was after Pesach,
Yes.
so about the Omer.
So excellent. That's the thing that everybody deals with, right? How do you deal with the Omer thing? So I solved the problem because I flew during the day. So I never crossed over a nighttime, but that was exactly the thing. I actually had a different issue, which was less of a problem in Tokyo. The issue of Chametz Shavar Alav HaPesach.
Wait.
Right? In other words, if a Jew owns Chametz on Pesach, you're not allowed to buy it from him after Pesach. The Chazal instituted a knas, a penalty, that you can only buy Chametz either from a guy or from somebody who didn't, or from Chametz that was produced after Pesach. Jew-owned Chametz that was owned by a Jew throughout Pesach, you're not allowed to use. And that's one of the big challenges, right, from people who are stores in the United States that are owned by Jewish people, maybe not observant Jewish people, and you have to make sure that you don't buy all sorts of chametz products from them. And it's not only bread and cereal and cookies, but it could be all sorts of liquor and beer and the like as well, which are also chametz, which are also pure chametz products. Again, so that was something that I thought I have to be worried about. But again, in Tokyo, when you run into a Japanese person in Tokyo, the likelihood is that he's not Jewish. And therefore it was less of an issue. I was also only eating in the Chabad house, and I figured that those guys are past muster on anybody's scale, so I didn't have the issue. But that was the other issue going right after Pesach over this. But Omer I got out of by flying in the day. What else can I tell you guys? Who's hungry for dinner? What did Shmuel make?
Chicken.
Should I stay?
Yeah.
Yes.
Guys, thank you very, very much. All the best. You guys are invited to our house at any time. We can take more than one of you. And the first time you come, you don't even have to clear the table.